Namaste and welcome to today's Organiser Decodes. For years now, you have been hearing about India's labor codes. News channels have been talking about them again. HR departments discuss them, trade unions oppose them, industries support them, and social media keeps circulating opinions about whether your take-home salary will reduce or your provident fund will increase. But the truth is, very few people actually understand what these labor codes are, why they were created, and how they were different from the other older labor laws, and how now they will change the Indian workplace. In this video, I will break everything down for you in the simplest, clearest language. We will begin with the background of India's old labor laws, a look at the problems they created, and understand what the new labor codes actually contain. We will also explore how they benefit workers and employers, and finally understand when and how they will be implemented and what challenges lie ahead. So let's begin. Before we even talk about the four labor codes, we must understand the world in which the older labor laws were created. Most of India's labor laws originated during the British era of the early years after independence. Some of them date back to the 1920s, 1930s and 1940 times, when the economy mainly consisted of textile mills, coal mines, plantations, railways and traditional factories. The nature of work was very simple. Workers came in, worked on machines, got daily wages and went home. Over the decades, the economy has changed completely. We saw the arrival of the IT sector, retail logistics, e-commerce automation, gig work, delivery apps, cab aggregators, warehouses, startups, special economic zone, flexible contracts and digital platforms. But our labor laws stayed stuck in the past. The biggest issue was fragmentation. India did not have one labor law. We had 29 different central labor laws, all created at different times with different purposes and different definitions. For instance, there was one law for minimum wage, another for payment of wages, another for bonus, another for trade unions, there was one for factories, there was one for mines, another for migrant workers, another for gratuity, and so on. Because all these laws worked separately, the system became extremely complicated. Compliance turned into a maze. Workers often didn't know what their rights were. Employers struggled to comply with overlapping rules. Courts were flooded with disputes because there were contradictions between them. And most importantly, the biggest part of India's workforce, our unorganized and gig workers, remained outside this formal protection. So it had become very clear that India needed a modern framework, something simpler, something more unified, something that recognized new forms of work, something that protect workers but also support industries, something that balanced welfare with growth. And this is why between 2019 and 2020, the Government of India consolidated these 29 labor laws into just 4 broad, modern, comprehensive labor codes. These codes are the Code of Wages, the Industrial Relations Code, the Occupational Safety, Health and Working Condition Codes, and the fourth one, the Social Security Code. Now let's understand each of them in detail. The first labor code is the Code of Wages. This code combines 4 earlier laws related to wages and transforms them into one unified system. It deals with the minimum wages, wage payment, bonus, and equal pay. The purpose of this code is to make wage-related rules universal. Earlier, minimum wages applied only to certain listed scheduled employments. Now the principle is simple. Every worker in every sector deserves a minimum wage. This broadens protection dramatically. Another major change in the introduction of a national floor wage. This is like a baseline minimum wage for the entire country. States can set wages higher than the floor wage but not lower. This ensures that no worker in India is paid below a basic dignity level, no matter which state they work in. The Code on Wages also gives a single standard definition of wages. Earlier, every law defined wages differently, leading to massive confusion. Now the definition is going to be uniform. This has an important impact. Provident fund, gratuity and other social security benefits will now be calculated more predictably. For many workers, especially those with artificially low basic salaries, this will mean stronger retirement savings. This code also strengthens provisions for equal pay for equal work and mandates timely payments of wages for all employees, not just those in certain sectors. In short, the Code on Wages tries to ensure fairness, clarity, and dignity for every worker in India. The second labor code is the Industrial Relations Code, which merges 3 earlier laws dealing with trade unions, standing orders, and industrial disputes. This code regulates how employers and employees interact. It deals with hiring, firing, retrenchment, closure, dispute resolutions, strikes, and even union recognition. One of the most debated changes in this code is the threshold for seeking government permission for retrenchment or closure. Earlier, establishments with 100 or more workers needed permission. Now the threshold has been increased to 300. Supporters argue that this gives industries flexibility to respond to economic fluctuations and encourages investment. Critics also argue that it may weaken job security for workers in small and medium establishments. Another major feature in this new labor code is the legal recognition of fixed-term employment. Companies can hire workers for a fixed duration without making them permanent, but those workers must receive the same benefits, including gratuity, as permanent employees on a proportional basis. This is meant to support seasonal industries, long-duration projects, and also startups. The code also introduces a structured system for strikes. Workers in many sectors will need to give at least a 14-day notice before going on strike. This aims to prevent sudden disruptions that can affect essential services or even national security for that matter. It also introduces the concept of negotiating union in establishments with multiple unions. Instead of fragmented negotiations, the code ensures that collective bargaining happens through a single recognized union or a council. And finally, this code rationalizes penalties. Earlier, many small violations could lead to jail in terms for employers. Now, only serious offenses, particularly related to worker safety and social security, carry imprisonment. The overall approach shifts from punishment to compliance. The third labor code is the Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions code, often called the OSH code. This code merges 13 laws related to factories, mines, contract labor, migrant workers and other establishments. The OSH code aims to modernize workplace safety standards and make compliance simpler and more transparent. One of the biggest reforms is the concept of a single registration or license. Earlier, factories, contract laborers, and other operations needed separate licenses. Now, one composite license can cover multiple operations even across different states. The code mandates free annual health checkups for workers in certain industries. This is extremely important for workers exposed to chemicals, dust, pollution, noise, or physical strain. It also formulates the law for interstate migrant workers. Instead of outdated paperwork, heavy procedures, the new framework is simpler and allows self-declaration. The aim is to ensure that migrant workers, who form a huge portion of India's labor, receive proper welfare benefits. A major progressive provision is allowing women to work night shifts, provided employers ensure adequate safety and transport arrangements. Instead of restricting women, the law creates a framework where they can participate fully in sectors like IT, hospitality, healthcare, and logistics. The OSH code also lays down clear rules for welfare facilities like drinking water, first aid, washrooms, restrooms, canteens, and creches. The goal is to secure dignity and safety at the workplace. The fourth and the most transformative labor code is the Social Security Code. This code brings together 9 major laws related to Provident Fund, employees' state insurance, maternity benefit, gratuity, building workers, and unorganized workers' welfare. The biggest contribution of this code is that it recognizes new forms of work. For the first time in Indian legal history, gig workers and platform workers have been formally recognized. This includes delivery partners, app-based drivers, online service providers, and others who work without a traditional employer-employee relationship. The code creates a legal possibility for social security schemes specifically designed for these gig workers. It allows the government to design frameworks where platforms may contribute a welfare fund. Although the implementation of such schemes will evolve over time, this legal recognition is a historic step. The Social Security Code also makes important changes in gratuity. Fixed-term employees who earlier did not qualify for gratuity unless they have completed 5 years can now receive gratuity based on proportional service. This makes the system fairer for temporary or project-based workers. It continues and strengthens provisions related to maternity benefit, including paid leave and nursing breaks. It also integrates workforce databases and aims to create a comprehensive registry of unorganized workers through platforms like the e-Shram portals. Overall, the Social Security Code aims to bring every formal worker, informal worker, or gig worker under some level of protections. Now that we have understood each code individually, let's zoom out and see the bigger picture. The first difference between the older codes and the new codes is consolidation. Earlier we had 29 different laws, today we have just 4 codes. This makes the system much easier to understand. The second difference is uniformity. The biggest technical reform in the standard definition of wages, which applies across the codes. This eliminates conflicting interpretations and makes benefit calculations consistent. The third difference is simplification of compliance. Single registration, single license, digital filling, and rationalized inspections make life simpler for industries. The fourth difference is wider coverage. Earlier, the focus was mostly on the formal sector. Now, the aim is to cover gig workers, platform workers, and unorganized workers as well. So, this is a major shift in India's labor policy philosophy. The fifth difference is flexibility in workforce management, increasing the retrenchment threshold to 300 workers, legalizing fixed-term employment, and making strikes more structured are attempts to make the labor market more responsible. And finally, the new framework reduces criminal penalties. The intention is to prevent harassment and minor issues and focus on serious violations. This is going to be very beneficial for workers because now they will stand to gain in several ways. They get clearer rights regarding minimum wages, timely payments, and equal pay. Standard wage definitions ensure stronger long-term savings through PF and gratuity. Health and safety standards improve under the OSH code. Women get more opportunities with night shift permissions under the proper safeguards. Gig workers gain legal visibility for the first time, and a large number of workers move under the umbrella of Social Security. The employers too will benefit from the reduced compliance burden. Multiple registrations are replaced by single licenses. Inspections became more predictable. Hiring becomes more flexible through fixed-term employment. Retrenchment procedures became clearer, and the overall environment becomes more business-friendly. This does not mean that the code favors employers over workers. Instead, the goal is to strike a balance by supporting job creation as well as protection of the workers. Well, labor is a subject in the concurrent list, meaning both the central and the state governments must frame rules. The central government has already prepared its rules. Many states have also drafted or notified their rules, but not all have completed the process. The labor codes will come into force only when most states are ready because the government wants a uniform implementation. Implementing them in some states and not in others would create confusion. When implementation begins, several things will change in practice. Salary structures may need to be redesigned in accordance with the uniform definition of wages. PF and gratuity contribution may increase, resulting in slightly lower take-home pay but stronger retirement savings. HR policies will also need updates. Safety and welfare standards will need compliance checks. Gig workers will need registration under new schemes, and companies will migrate to a new digital compliance portal. These changes will not happen overnight. There will be a transition period during which industries, workers, HR teams, and government departments will adapt. But beside everything, there is one more thing. No major reform is perfect, and these labor codes also face criticism. Trade unions believe that raising the retrenchment threshold weakens job security. Some states, especially those ruled by opposition parties, have raised concerns over certain provisions. The Social Security framework for gig workers is still evolving and needs more clarity on funding and delivery. And the success of the codes will depend heavily on how well state governments will implement them on the ground. To conclude, India's new labor codes represent one of the biggest reforms in the country's economic and social landscape since independence. They replace a complex, outdated and fragmented system with a modern, unified and more inclusive framework. They aim to provide fairness to workers, flexibility to employers, protection to gig workers, dignity to migrant workers, and clarity to industries. They may take some time to fully implement and fine-tune, but they mark a transformative shift in how India regulates work, wages, safety, and social security. So if you found this detailed explainer useful, do like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching.